A problem that Dr. Ryan and his audience seem to have is getting the attention of one woman, so much so that a very large portion of them have decided to just hate them instead. But what if the opposite was true? What if their struggle was not to find a woman, but rather choose between a couple? Now, unfortunately, men who are not always good men do end up in relationships, and sometimes that could lead to men that then cheat on their wives, their girlfriends, or their partners, and then have to make a decision as to whether they want to stay with their wife and just never tell them or go on with their mistress. I hope to God I never put my partner in that position, but unlike them, I'm not going to pretend it wouldn't be my fault if I did. There is also the much more realistic problem of dating multiple people and then deciding when to be monogamous with one. So without much more of an introduction, I'm going to let Dr. Ryan take it away.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is choosing between two women. So this is a subject that actually comes up fairly frequently in my consultations with men. Either the man is choosing between two women he's been dating for a monogamous commitment, or it's a man choosing between his wife and his mistress.
Yeah, I couldn't be some sort of counselor because the second you tell me you're cheating on your wife, I'm calling her. Let me just put her on speaker real quick. You're choosing between your wife and who?
Since I see the same patterns of thought arise in all of these discussions, I thought I'd make an episode to address this issue proactively. Unfortunately, by the time the guy calls me, he's usually fairly distraught and confused. This is because he's in a state of vacillation.
Without getting into vacillation, I think if you're distraught, confused about whether or not you want to seek a relationship with the person you've been cheating on your wife with, you should just be alone. Like at that point, you should not have the option to go back to your wife.
In the sense that he's going back and forth in his mind between option A and option B. Typically, he's comparing the two women with each other, sometimes even going so far as to create lists of relative pros and cons.
I can handle the conversation of like choosing between people you're dating a lot easier than, hey, do you want to be with your wife or your mistress? So I feel like we should, at some point, check into one of those.
And this is a problem for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the man's intelligence, creativity, and problem-solving skills are being constrained by these two options. In his mind, it's either option A or option B. That's all he can see. However, in reality, there's option A and option B, but also option C.
Option C is just going to be keep cheating, bro. If she doesn't catch you, it doesn't count. And this is why these people are always like, I was born in the wrong generation. I want a traditional family like they had in the 1950s. I want to be able to have a wife, a second wife, a family I see in the morning, and a family I see when I tell the first family I'm going to work. I'm first generation American. I didn't have like the whole American family generations ago. All right. My grandpa didn't have a secret family. That's you guys. Everyone before me was born in Mexico. So my grandparents just have 40 kids. They have 10. Okay. They have 10.
And D, and E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. You get the idea. There's actually a whole bunch of options.
This guy wanted to be one of the Wiggles so bad. Damn, imagine trying out to be one of the Wiggles. They don't want you, so now you have to get your degree in psychology.
But because his thought process is restricted, he can't see them. And this limits his freedom of action, which is generally to his detriment. When a man has the good problem of having multiple women in his life, he should never, ever, under any circumstances, ever make the mistake of comparing them with each other.
Okay, I thought that was going somewhere completely different. That makes a lot more sense. I still am not sure where we are in terms of like, are these people you're dating or are we talking about the people who are cheating on their wives? But yeah, I probably wouldn't compare people to each other, whether or not you're dating them at the same time. Like, oh, my ex used to cook for me all the time and you don't even have parents. Sorry. Am I supposed to have parents? I'm 27. I'm old.
Besides being the thief of joy, comparison generally leads to suboptimal outcomes. Why? Well, let's say that in your mind, option A is slightly better than option B. That is, you compared the two options to each other and found option A to be superior. Well, once you make the decision, option B evaporates as a basis of comparison, and you'll have to deal with option A on its own merits. And at that point, it may not be all that helpful that the option you chose was slightly better than the option you didn't.
I'm still going to be stuck on what situation we're comparing. If you're comparing your wife to your mistress, it's going to go into that conversation, that unreal conversation of like, oh, my wife is my home, my kids, my chores, why I go to work, and where all my money goes. And my mistress is fun. My mistress is who my wife was when we were dating. But that's not real. If you lose that spark in your marriage, that's at the very least half your fault. And I don't know that going and sleeping with someone else is the right way to handle that. Now, when you're dating multiple people, it's 2025. A lot of the people who are here who are single are on dating apps. I'm going to go ahead and assume that when you swipe on a dating app, you don't swipe once, wait a day to see if you match, then try again. You probably swipe, 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 run out of swipes, try again the next day, get a couple of matches, and then talk to them at the same time. Maybe one of them won't respond, but there's times when you are talking to multiple people, and maybe you go out with the first person on a Monday, the second person on Tuesday, and you happen to end up dating multiple people. But then maybe you do want a monogamous relationship with one of them. However, those seem like two entirely separate conversations, and conflating them together and saying, this is all the same way, this is all the same type of choosing between two women doesn't make sense to me.
What's important is whether the option you chose is sufficient with respect to whatever your goals happen to be moving forward.
Moving forward is important there because if in the future, right, if in a month, a year, 2 years, you don't want to be stuck in this family you've created and now you want to go with your mistress, in the future, that's what's going to drive you over there. But doesn't that just make you kind of a person? I'm in no means someone that tells people to stay in relationships they don't want to be in, even if those are marriages, but I wouldn't cheat my way out of mine. And what are you going to do in that situation when the mother tells your kids, oh, daddy cheated on me? Are you going to say no? Are you going to lie? Are you going to say, mom's just making stuff up? Are you going to say, mom turned the kids against me? No, she told them the truth. And most of you have not been here for the entire 7 to 8 months that I've been making videos like this. But how many times have we seen parents say something like, oh, the other parent turned my kids against me when I didn't want to take care of them, when I refused to show up to the visits, when I just didn't want anything to do with them. Their mom was honest with them. How could she do that? I'm not telling you that the conversation of when you should leave your wife for your mistress doesn't have a video to be made about it. I don't think it makes sense to make it sound so similar to something that is such a simple choice. If you are dating multiple people and you choose to date one, it might hurt the other one's feelings. If you leave your wife for your mistress, dude, that affects your wife, that affects your possible children, that affects your family, their family, how they all look at you. There is so much going on there. And I just think they are separate conversations.
What's important is whether the option you chose is sufficient with respect to whatever your goals happen to be moving forward. So never compare option A with option B. In these situations, the question is not, do I go with A or B? The question is, do I go with A or not A? And independently, do I go with B or not B? Like each relationship should be examined on its own merits and relative to your own self-relevant goals.
Without the previous context of the way that he talks about women in general, this talk itself isn't all that bad. Also, if the talk was a lot more generic, it would probably be a lot more helpful. It's not specific enough to be specific, and it's not generic enough to be helpful. If he could talk about putting yourself in a position in which you feel like you have to make a choice between two things, and then speak of them in their own independent ways, that makes sense as a conversation. But to then attach the whole them being your relationships with women to them, it's weird.
This will increase the likelihood that your choice will make sense past the point of decision for some months or years afterwards. Here's another important thing to understand. The women in question might not like this, but sometimes the resolution to this problem is not an either-or solution. Sometimes it's a both-and solution.
For the people here who are monogamous, including myself, I want you to give me your best pitch for getting your mistress and your wife to both be okay with each other being in your life. Hey, I don't want to ruin our family. What if we added one? Hey, I know you've been having some trouble with the kids lately. While I'm at work, I got us a nanny. Yeah, she's gonna live here. You know you've been my wife for a long time and I got you a girlfriend. No, I got you a girlfriend. No, she's for you. Ah, fine, I guess we can share. Heads, my mistress moves in with us. Tails, we move in with our mistress and leave the kids here. Heads. Damn, we don't have an extra room though. Guess we'll just get a bigger bed. Normally during his talks, I have like a good example of like something that's happened in my life or a friend's life or somebody that's close enough to where I know. But I don't think I know anyone who left their wife for their mistress. Oh, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I'm not allowed to say this one out loud. It's so new. I do. I'm not friends with either of them. In fact, I dislike them both. But I know it happened. I want to tell that story so bad. The only person I've been able to tell is Lee, and it is blowing up inside of me. It didn't work out. So the only example that I have is one in which the wife found out, the marriage broke up, the married man and the mistress did not work out. Who saw that coming?
And sometimes it's a neither nor solution. As I've said before, roads only go where they go. Roads are static. They go only from point A to point B along their given route. So if option A is a road going north and option B is a road going west, which road are you going to take? Well, that depends on where you want to go, doesn't it? This is why it's essential that you not compare the options against each other, but against your own goals, which is your destination. So if you want to go southeast, then you should take neither road.
I wish he would get more specific about whether he's talking about choosing between a wife and a mistress or choosing between people you're dating, because then it would be easier to speak about this. Because there's like this curve going on when you're married, right? In this situation, you're married, you have a mistress. That's the situation you're in. The curve is you want to have fun in your life, then you want to settle down and have kids. Turns out you didn't really want that. Now you want to have fun again. You want to do that without the person you had fun with the first time. My biggest problem with that is how they would speak of it if it was the other way around. How they would speak of the women if the women were cheating on their husband to have fun. If the women have to choose between the person they're cheating on their husband with and their husband, they're a bad person. But the men in this situation are just complex. The men in this situation just have too much going on. Their love, their creativity, everything about them is just being funneled into this decision. You can't rush him. The pocket's protected. So what do? Do you throw a deep ball or do you tuck it and run? I don't know which one goes which way. I just wanted to make a football metaphor. How Shador Sanders fell to the 5th round, I will never understand.
This is because either road will actually take you farther and farther from where you want to go. Just because the road is at your feet doesn't mean it will take you where you want to end up. In some cases, you may even need to backtrack a bit because you've gotten so lost or turned around. But men who have become too constrained in their thought processes are subject to forgetting this common sense. This is why I ask these men to consider what they would choose for themselves if they weren't aware of what either one of these women wanted. This is because as long as the man is vacillating between these two options, he actually exists in the frames of these two women simultaneously.
That's just such a weird way to put that.
So what does this mean, that a man exists in the frames of two women simultaneously? Well, let's say that the wife is demanding the man leave his mistress and stay with her, and that the mistress is demanding the man leave his wife and stay with her.
Who are we blaming in that situation? Are you blaming your wife for wanting you to leave the woman you are cheating on her with? Are you blaming your mistress for her wanting you to leave your wife, like you probably said you would a million times by now? Or are you blaming the man like any rational person would? Ugh, not on this channel, Max. Not on Psycax. Can't do that.
Not only does this insist on a mutually exclusive decision that may not necessarily be required, but in his mindset, the man's entire range of optionality is either to give woman A what she wants or woman B what she wants. Like, what about what the man wants? The choice is not between wife or mistress. This is a product of the women controlling the discussion.
You would like to hope that in this situation, the women are strong enough to go, I don't care what you want, here's what I want, and it's you to get out. However, this is real life, and in real life, when you're so deep into your romantic relationships, whether it's marriage or not, you unfortunately will do almost anything to keep that person in your life. And sometimes that is dealing with cheating. And it sucks. And in a rational world, you want to say, oh, he cheated on you, leave him. But that's not the world we live in. There are too many times where people forgive each other because they think love is too hard to find. And that sucks. You deserve better. This is a hypothetical situation. The people in his audience have enough trouble finding one person that likes them, let alone two. But for the women in this situation, that sucks. I have a lot less pity for the mistress. But when a man comes to you and he says, yes, I'm married, but we're in the process of divorce. Yes, I'm married, but I'm leaving her. Yes, I'm married, but things happen. It would be weird to look at this situation in any way and not blame the man for me. And that's not a gender thing. That is a thing about him being in the middle of this. In the same way that there's a woman on TikTok who says, to my ex who lured me out of a great marriage and then got me and then cheated on me. And there's a 7-minute video where she tells the entire story of how she got married young. People at her job constantly flirted with her. And eventually she said, you know what? Fine. Cheats on her husband. And then the person that she cheated on her husband with eventually cheats on her. And she blames her mom. She blames her husband. She blames her job. She blames the people that were flirting with her. At no point does she take any sort of accountability. And the comments on this video, on that video, on the other videos where she's very pro-Trump are all very, very negative. People don't care that she's a woman. She did something bad and people are holding her accountable for that. So if you're in this situation where you're cheating on one person with another, you're kind of technically cheating on them, right? If you're going back and forth, I don't know how that works. You're just not a good person. And there are not very many situations in which that changes. Is your wife abusive? Has your wife been cheating on you? Does your wife try and stab you every time you walk in through the door? Probably not. Did your mistress point a gun at you and force you to sleep with her? Granted, I would rather be shot than cheat on my partner, but I would rather be shot than a lot of things. I would rather be shot than deal with most minor inconveniences. So I'm not like the baseline for that.
The choice is actually between the wife or no wife. Like, will the wife help the man go where he wants to go? And between the mistress and no mistress. That is, will the mistress help the man go where he wants to go? And this can be hard for men because many of them haven't thought about what they want in quite some time. This is because they have gotten so in the habit of serving their women.
If you have a mistress, brother, you are serving yourself. Like, there's just such a large separation there that I don't think get. If you have a mistress, you are serving yourself. You're serving yourself outside of your marriage.
I did a consultation with a man the other day who had been married for 30 years, and he couldn't tell me what he wanted. Apparently, no one had asked or cared to ask for decades. He was just so used to being married and catering to the demands and interests and preferences of his wife that he kind of no longer existed as an independent person capable of self-directed thought.
I'm not going to pretend that doesn't happen, but I think it happens a lot more often with mothers and also, yes, husbands. But with husbands, it's kind of your own fault, right? Like, yes, you're probably expected to go to work and to take care of your family monetarily, but you're probably allowed to have your hobbies. And if not, let's say you fulfill your obligations as a father and as a husband, and now you have some free time left over, maybe a couple hours a week, and you want to spend them going to play golf. I don't play golf. I don't have the neck strength for it, but let's say you want to golf. And your wife is like, hey, I hate when you golf. I hate when you do that. I want to beat you into nothing. Then that's probably a good reason to get out of that marriage and not a great reason to cheat and not a great reason to find a mistress. I'm not going to romanticize marriage. There's a reason why half of them end up in divorce, but you should be your own person in it. And I don't know where that line is where, as a husband in this situation, you get to dissolve into nothing and then you get to blame other people for it. The reason I say it happens with mothers is because mothers are generally forced to give up their time to take care of other people. And it happens with like holiday cooking, right? Where you don't get to participate because you have to cook the whole time. You have to set the table. You have to do all of these things while they get to watch football or they get to open gifts or just taking care of the family, where the husband in this situation works 9 to 5. You wake up and you make him food. You make the kids food. You take care of the kids. You take care of him when he gets home. You take care of the kids again. You put the kids to bed. And whether or not you can find patches of time in between them, they don't really matter when you have to go back and doing what you're already doing. There are breaks in between work. You ever taken a break at work and just sat in a break room? Does that feel like time to yourself? Does that feel like personal time? No. I sit there and I dread going back to work. I've been in my own relationships where I felt like I couldn't be part of myself. And I've been in my own friendships where I felt like the way that I joke isn't helpful, or the way that I express myself is kind of mean sometimes. But I've learned that I just shouldn't be in those relationships. When I was younger and when I was 20, I was like, oh, is that too mean? And I kind of, okay, I get it. I get how to be nice to people. I get how to apologize. I get how to do all that. I learned a lot. But now if I'm your friend and I feel like I have to be just quiet around you because I'm so scared of how you're going to react to anything I say, I just can't be your friend. And I've learned that. And that goes into romantic relationships too. If you cannot be yourself around a person, you should probably just get out of there. And again, that's a lot easier to say than to do. But we're having a hypothetical conversation about choosing between your wife and the woman you are cheating on your wife with. I can have a hypothetical conversation about you just leaving your marriage.
That he kind of no longer existed as an independent person capable of self directed thought. And while the women out there might not see any problem with this, I imagine my male audience might think very differently.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to convince me that women are going to be okay with their husbands just being like shells of themselves. I'm very sure that these women married their husbands for the person that they were and hope that they continue to be.
So if option A goes north and option B goes west, then neither option is particularly useful if you want to go southeast. On the other hand, if you want to go northwest, well, you can make use of both roads, can't you? Head west, then north, then west, then north, then west. Or you can seek out a third option that heads northwest in a straightforward manner. Turns out there are actually plenty of roads. So it's important not to be constrained by a false dichotomy and to make your decision in the context of your overarching goals. At the end of the day, choosing between two women is a good problem to have. That's because it's a problem of abundance and optionality, as opposed to a problem of scarcity and limitation. So nice work.
All I've gotten out of this is him seemingly going, don't. You have to choose between two women? Don't. Wait for them to make you choose, which then leads into the problem of like, oh, but you have to choose because like these women have forced you to become a shell of yourself. And now you feel like nobody cares about what you want. And you obviously want to be able to make your own decisions, right? But not this time. Not this time. Wait until you have to make a choice or find a road that allows you to not make a choice. And I know that's not exactly what he said, but that's what I feel like he is saying. Why would you choose between two women when you can just keep having them both?
So nice work. However, what makes this problem so difficult for the majority of men is that they're not used to having this problem. They're not used to having abundance and optionality with women. So they still approach the decision with a scarcity mentality. And scarcity mentality is always more focused on minimizing loss than it is on maximizing gain, which can lead to all kinds of suboptimal outcomes.
Something I knew he was going to do, and exactly what he did, was mention early on that this could also apply to people you are dating, but then not talk about it at all. All he talked about was a situation in which you are married and have a mistress. And if you are cheating on your wife and trying to make a choice between wife or mistress, I'm going to go ahead and say you don't deserve either. For the people that do somehow end up in these situations, how honest are you with your wife about your mistress and your mistress about your wife? Are you leading either of them on? Are you leading your mistress on? Are you telling her that you and your wife are getting divorced? Does your wife even know about your mistress? Or is it just a work friend? I don't think this talk went anywhere. So going through the comments, it's just a bunch of people being like, congrats on the book release, or this helped me decide between something completely unrelated, or this is what I sound like when I'm choosing between ice cream flavors. But things like ice cream or hobbies or which wood to use when you're building a chair are things that don't really affect other people. But choosing between other people, choosing how other people get to enjoy their lives, choosing to break up somebody's family, or to have completely lied to one person is an entirely different thing than choosing between objects. Women, and if this were reversed to men, other people are not objects, and I don't think we should treat them like so. And I feel like that's just not a hot take. I don't have too much more to say. I think this was a very unhelpful talk, especially when it went into the whole wife and mistress thing. If he had said, this is how I feel about making decisions and left it at that, and then talked kind of the same way, sure. Yeah, super helpful. Figure out how it's going to affect you and what you want. But when you bring other people into it and then treat them like they don't have their own feelings, their own wants, their own needs, and if they do, they're superimposed onto yours, and that's bad, that's just stupid. Some of you have been asking where Toast is. Toast has been enjoying the sunshine. She has access to the yard all day, so sometimes she just sits out there, but Here she is. So if you like to say goodbye to me or you like to say goodbye to Toast, this is probably a really good time to do so. Goodbye.